Yeah, awful. Right?
Unbelievable. Thank you. Thank you. What am I supposed to say? Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here. I forgot. I got lost.
He forgot his line. Take two.
All right. Welcome back to the Convo Couch. Pasta Jardula here.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Johnny Sue is on the ones and twos. How we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Happy Wednesday. Is it Earth Day today or is that tomorrow?
I think it's tomorrow. It's tomorrow.
Is it tomorrow?
Yeah,
All right, because tomorrow I'm going to make green pancakes for Earth Day.
What do you mean?
It's tomorrow. I'm going to take spinach and I'm going to blend it in the Ninja with the cashew milk or the soy milk or I don't use so much soy milk, hemp milk. So I'm going to get a green base from spinach and then I'm going to mix it in with the pancake mix. So for Earth Day, we're going to have green pancakes. Mix. Yes.
Yeah, not like the fake pancakes.
No. I don't use. I use flour and I use baking soda and I use a little salt, a little sugar,
soda? Huh.
a little baking soda. Well, no, I use actually baking powder.
Powder. Okay.
Yeah, you could use a little baking soda too as well, right? Kaden Rodriguez, thank you. Who's laughing at me? Spirulina. No, I have a little coconut sugar actually. I use that I like. This fam likes to keep it healthy, so I tries. He says use spirulina. No, I'm going to use some coconut sugar. I got that coconut sugar.
Spirulina is good for you, though.
It is?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to put some of that in there. And then I have a little of the green powder mix that Johnny has, that I've been stealing from him the whole time. The power greens. I'll put a little bit of that in the mix.
I like the banana, blueberry, or banana, whatever pancakes you made the other day. That shit was good. You just need to add protein powder for protein. Because I can
do that. I can use
protein.
I can also do superfoods. I have some cassava. I can put a little cassava mixture in there too as well. So there's many things I could do but they're going to be green tomorrow. I can use coconut milk. Yes, Kaden Rodriguez. I'm talking to Kaden Rodriguez. Talking to a lot of people, even the vegan succubus. Use spirulina, not spinach. No, I have a lot of spinach I got to get rid of, and it's at the edge. But today is a friend of ours' birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday to Todd Jones.
Todd fucking Jones. Sorry for cursing, Mom. We love you, Todd Jones. Happy birthday. I hope you're going to enjoy my baked ziti I'm making for you tonight. Should I make meatballs or sausage?
Sausage.
I'm going to put sausage in. You know what? I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to put the sausage inside the baked ziti. So it's just one thing. You eat it together.
Yeah, but
of course,
it's not real cheese. So.
No, it's not real cheese. It's going to be cashew ricotta, almond
Somebody
mozzarella.
needs to invent cheese that is just the same texture. I'm not a texture person unless it's cheese. Like the cheese, just the way it stretches.
But listen, that's because it's got the fats.
Yeah.
You can't emulate that. It's just really tough. I mean, you can put like more wheat products in it and up the carbohydrate intake, but it's like you're never going to get that. But here's the thing. It's not as good, maybe, but the satisfaction of knowing how awesome you were to all those loving cows out there, that you didn't exploit them for that milk, for that mozzarella. You said, nah, I'm going the bean way. It's beautiful. And of course, I'm going to make a nice zesty gravy tonight. Nice San Marzano tomatoes, garlic, onion, cook it down, veggie stock, little white wine. And I'm going to use oregano, parsley, and basil. I'm going to use a 3-herb mixture for everything for Todd Jones's birthday.
Nice, fam.
And spinach salad because we got a lot of it.
I'm excited, fam. Yeah. So, guys, there's yesterday we had the verdict of Derek Chauvin. We're going to be talking with Garland Nixon about that, about Ma'Khia Bryant. We're going to be talking about that. A lot of people have contradicting opinions on that. Yeah. But a lot of you guys were asking me to talk about the PRO Act.
Yes.
And I hesitated because I am not excited like a lot of progressives are about it. And there are multiple reasons. One of them being that it really isn't going to do very much at all, as it claims. They were, you have to understand why somebody like Biden, who's literally been the guy that's opposed the workers for the longest time. I mean, he I think he was pro the repealing of Glass-Steagall. He was the guy that has always just on the wrong side of things, right? And he is even like on board with, he went to Bessemer, Alabama, right? And this is where you criticized the Hill Rising. I think it was you. It was multiple people too, where they were trying to say, this is a good sign. Joe Biden actually wants to help unionize workers against Amazon. It's not that simple. Joe Biden doesn't want to do that. What Joe Biden wants to do is help the unions become more of corporate entities that respond to the union leadership that is, let's face it, the vast majority of union leadership is corrupt.
Yeah.
Okay, not the members as much as the leadership, but the leadership is what matters, and we've seen this in all of our work, even with the teachers union, all of these things that we've covered. So that's a fact. So Joe Biden and the Democrats, basically what they want to do is, instead of allowing this insurgence that's happening, because people are angry. You know, Amazon workers are angry. A lot of workers are angry. They're not making any money. They're being, laid off. They don't have any benefits. So to prevent an actual workers' insurgency or workers' revolution, whatever you want to call it, they're trying to pacify this anger into a controlled sort of way through the unions, and to make it so there isn't an insurgency. So basically, here is a little bit of bread, take it, and you're not gonna fight back. And this has happened before in history, so we're gonna go over that.
Yeah, I think the important thing is, like, when AOC said there's an Easter egg in this last bill. Well, in this particular bill, there's a lot of blow-up mechanisms. There's a lot of landmines, including the fact that it gives the president a right, just like Harry Truman did, to crush a lot of dissent and strikes and wildcat strikes and stuff like that, to say, hey, this is unlawful and you can't do this. So I mean, that is a big thing right now. And as far as unions are concerned, a lot of unions' leaderships are terrible. A lot of the unions that are left behind are awful.
They function just like mini corporations.
They do.
That's
terrible. And they take a lot of people's money and they don't really deliver for the worker. And that's something we need to start new unions. I mean, there's a lot of things we need to do to kind of get into this whole situation. It's like, if you don't have a lot of jobs out here and you don't have a lot of companies that really can give the working class people jobs and money anyways, what good are the unions? We're still not addressing the real problems, which we can talk about. I don't want to get off, which is globalism, all this other bullshit, and how do we really fix these problems? Same thing when it comes to, like, police shootings and everything else. I think we have to fix our systemic problems within our country, like Medicare for all. I mean, if we have mental issues that are dealt with properly and we have a proper vessel, you know what I'm saying, to help people who need this and stuff. Everything's connected. So, I mean, I always like to go to the root of the problems. However, this does have a lot of landmines in this bill. And when these people are signing on to it, you have to start going, wait a second, why are they so easily signing on to it? And who's going to come out against it and really break down these bills and show the areas of concerns and what we really need to be done, what needs to be done.
Right. And these bills are always extremely long, extremely tedious to read.
Yes.
So people
hundreds of pages.
Just see the highlight. Oh, DSA supports it. Oh, AOC supports it. Okay, it must be good. Let me just jump on something I haven't read. And that's like the problem too.
Yeah.
I was reading it last night.
Biden's presidency so far is a lot like Obama's. A lot of lip service. A lot of just for show shit. Nothing really that's really going to change the way we live and stuff like that. Nothing solid that's going to help working class people across the board. That's going to help people get off the streets. That's going to help people get Medicare. So it's a lot of fucking lip service and for show bullshit. So just beware of that. The same thing with Biden's camp. It's the same thing. And guys like Anon going, it's a new progressive era. Bro, you got shit in a pandemic. What progressive era?
Yeah, there's no progressive
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so there's a lot to learn about the AFL and CIO. Like, it's not even like a fucking good union at all. It's basically like a front. But anyway, they posted this tweet saying Senator Joe Manchin has signed on to co-sponsor the PRO Act, saying it will level the playing field for union workers. Let's hear what our wonderful Joe Manchin, who is always on the side of workers, has
said. Blue Dog Democrat.
I'm pleased to announce that I am co-sponsoring the PRO Act. 50% of unions fell in their first year of organizing. This legislation will level the playing field. I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to move this bill through a legislative process.
You see the way he's looking off to the left and reading shit?
Yeah.
It's not like he's like out there fighting for workers and whatnot. Like, we're going to sponsor this bill. This bill is going to do this. Just read it. Just read it.
Yeah.
Just give the people the show.
Yeah. So, just Joe Manchin, you know who he is, right? Yeah. He's not for Medicare for all. He has been one of the guys that is like completely acts like a Republican in a lot of ways when we were trying to get the $2,000 for people. All of these things, like, he's terrible. why is he signing on to something that would actually help people? You need to ask those questions. So
after shooting down the minimum wage,
right? After being so adamantly against
I'm
the
not going to
minimum
give word, but here I am going to help you. Come on, guys.
Okay, so John Nichols said, if you look at the 1950s, when you had the highest rate of unionization, you had one of the lowest rates of income inequality. This is what U.S. Representative Mark Pocan said on why passing the PRO Act will not just strengthen unions, but in fact strengthen society. Very vague, by the way. Mark Pocan is a guy who was the chair of the Progressive Caucus in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
He stepped down because guess what? He was made to look a fool, and Jimmy Dore eviscerated him in one of his videos. He was against Medicare for all. He's a faux leftist. He actually was one of the people that supported Sanders when it was convenient, but has supported corporate Democrats in Wisconsin. And I know this because I know people in Wisconsin, and they do not like this guy. This guy is a corporate Democrat, and he pretends to be progressive. And here he is talking about strengthening unions. And the thing is, it is not enough to strengthen unions because, like we said, the union leadership is often corrupt and they don't do anything for the workers. You need to strengthen workers' rights without the unions. And unions are good, but right now unions are corrupted in a lot of ways. This is what people need to understand. You can't just, it's like systemic now.
Yeah.
Like the root of the problem is the fact that workers have no rights. And they're still paying dues, and these people aren't doing anything.
Yeah. You know who would start, we have to start new unions. You know who'd be good people to ask to start new unions? Socialist, communist, people who fight for workers. But they got everybody so duped and dumbed down that the fact that they won't even look that way in that direction for people who are actually fighting for workers' rights. We need new unions in here that are going to spark the modern day for workers and whatnot. But there's a lot of other work behind the scenes that needs to be done too as well.
And Mark Pocan was also attacked by Amazon workers. So this isn't he's not usually on the side of the right side of things.
We need to listen to somebody who knows what they're talking about, fam, like Ryan Grimm and AOC. Right?
Yeah, Ryan Grimm and AOC, they've been on the right side of things, especially as of late. They were against force of vote. They're still talking about Ryan Grimm's still going after Jimmy Dore, saying that Jimmy Dore's trying to deplatform. All these things are happening, right? But here is what Ryan Grimm had tweeted, right? He said, the PRO Act calls are having an effect. Angus King just signed on. We reported earlier he was leaning that way. 4 holdouts remain. Now it's 3. I believe, I forget who the 3 are. I know Cinema is one of them, but now it's 3. And that's the thing. The Intercept did a whole article on it, how great the PRO Act is. And they had the list of all the people that were supporting it here. And so here's the thing, right? The calls are having an effect. They're here and I'm here. I'm sorry, but your phone calls to support something that is not really going to change much for workers at all. They're trying to make you feel like electoralism, that pushing these politicians works. That these politicians, if you make enough phone calls, they're going to respond to you. And that's just not the case anymore because guess what? You don't have money. You're not giving them money.
Yeah.
So they're not even in charge. We have these corporations like Amazon, these other corporations, these union leaderships that are getting rich off of the backs of workers. That's what's happening. And nobody's talking about that. Everybody's like, oh, the PRO Act, but they're not talking about what's the problem with it is. And now I would like to believe, right? I would like to be like Ryan Grimm and believe that this is going to solve all our problems. And so there's AOC, of course. If you guys have noticed the relationship between AOC and Ryan Grimm, come on.
It's getting a little bit cozy there,
it's
fam.
It's very cozy.
Get a little bit cozy.
The call works, folks. #PRO Act. Okay. So they're all focused on the PRO Act, right? They're not focused on anything else, though, right? On getting people more money, on Medicare for all, on what housing crisis. No, now it's all about the PRO Act. Ooh, we're going to allow workers to unionize more easily, etc. And so
this is violence.
People are still mad at her. So the other issue, fam, that with the PRO Act is you have to notice the relationship with DSA. DSA, which was the
who
vast
didn't want forced to vote,
protects AOC at all costs.
Yep.
Has been instrumental in getting the word out about the PRO Act, the positive word out about the PRO Act. DSA affiliated Jacobin also has written articles on how great it is. So this is Jeremy Flood. He said DSA's organizing on the PRO Act has been nothing short of incredible. With none of the resources of a national labor federation, it's been able to direct a volunteer pressure campaign bigger than any other org in the country. Still can't believe this is real. And so this is my problem with this. We flipped Joe Manchin. DSA pressure worked. Our 500,000 phone calls pushed Joe Manchin to co-sponsor the PRO Act. This is my problem, is that you're duping people into thinking that that's what happened. Do you think Joe Manchin is, in his life, in his record, has supported anything without having some sort of vested interest in it? Or are you, like, come on. Why are we tricking people like this? Why don't we call it like it is? Why don't we just flat out say the PRO Act has some good things in it, but does it have the power to actually help workers, to actually have real, like a real workers' revolution, a real workers have like a power grab? No, it doesn't do that. And we're going to go over why it doesn't do that. And a lot of people are going to be pissed because they're like, well, this is actually good. But the thing is, guys, there's a reason why all these people are supporting something. They want you to have faith in the DSA, which once again pushes people back into the Democratic Party. They want you to have faith in the progressives like AOC and the Squad, which once again, they're pushing people into the Democratic Party. And even Joe Biden is getting accolades for saying something very basic like, oh yeah, like we need to support unions and I stand with the people of Bessemer, Alabama.
Yeah.
When he has done absolutely nothing, is currently doing absolutely nothing to help the working class. It's all talk and nothing of substance, really.
Yeah. It feels like a lot of these bills that they pass and everything is like they promise to give you a nice Movado or a Rolex watch, but instead they give you a Swatch and they start bragging about it. Hey, it's a Swatch watch, though. You know, look at this. This is awesome. Whatnot. It's like, well, really, that's not what you promised us. You promised to give us a lot. You promised to give us something substantial, and then you come out with all these Fugazi-like kind of bills that have all these landmines in them that are so huge that it takes like a secretary, an office of secretaries to break it down about what exactly is.
And,
it's like,
and
you know,
they don't most of the time. Most
that's
of the time they don't. And so it's like the Wish app. I don't know if you guys have ordered something from the Wish app. I haven't, but I've seen it's like the memes. Have you seen the memes from the Wish app? It's like it'll show you like for girls, right? It'll show you like a nice dress and it's like, you know, $20 and it's like a beautiful dress. You get it in the mail and it's like a freaking rag. Like seriously, people have posted their pictures of what it looks like in the picture and what you got. It's like Amazon does it sometimes. You'll order something and it'll look completely different.
What was the festival that they had off like all the it was like a festival. It was supposed to be crazy, but it was a big fucking thing and nobody performed. And then the biggest meme was a kid put up a picture of the food they were giving you and it was like terrible. They gave you like a cheap bread cheese sandwich with a carrot and shit. And they were promising like all this beautiful food and stuff.
That's the Democratic
everybody was
Party.
Stuck on the island and shit. That's it.
Oh, yeah. That's literally the Democratic Party.
This is the Democratic Party's Fire Fest. They're selling you. Here's the tickets. Everybody was bragging about it. Not good.
But yeah, well, that was pretty funny though. So none other than, of course, the World Socialist website, which, by the way, you know, we disagree on a substantial amount of things. But what I do agree with them on is their criticism of the Democratic Party and DSA and their workers. They know a lot about workers' rights and workers' unions. That is, even Jimmy Dore pointed this out. So I'm going to read, just go along and kind of go over this article. And again, this is touching on DSA, right? They said, as our top external priority, this is their priority now. The statement declares DSA will embark on a national campaign to pass the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, the PRO Act. It's talking about it as transformative legislation. It says it's going to give people power to give power to unions to organize workers. And it's framed around the claim that the passage of the bill would be a historic win for workers of color and for immigrants. And so that's the whole framing of the whole thing. Like it's transformative. It's the most important bill of our time, etc. But this bill was actually crafted by Democrats in the House of Education and Labor Committee to bolster the union bureaucracies that facilitate, this is what they're saying, the suppression of the working class struggle. Why would something that supports unions be against workers? Well, because you're not attacking the root problem that unions are also corrupt and that they're not doing anything for workers.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of funny because I read there's so many good things in this article, but we're not going to go all over it. But they talk about the Wagner Act and how historically, this has happened before, that there were a series of amendments that happened to the National Labor Relations Act. This is under from the Wagner Act to the PRO Act.
Yep.
And it was passed in 1935 and signed into law by President FDR. So one of the criticisms of FDR was that he actually with the Green New Deal, with the New Deal, and with the war economy, basically they took a lot of rights away from workers and pacified them in this way. So the Wagner Act was passed under conditions of explosive class struggle in the U.S. during the Great Depression of the 1930s, and only 18 years after the Russian Revolution, which had, of course, powerful impetus on the growth of the class struggle internationally. So that happened. And Roosevelt, of course, is criticized, like I said, because he was part of the regulating this labor movement, so into a pro-capitalist movement, like I said, with a New Deal and societal reforms, which, I mean, a lot of us were taught were really good, and some of them were.
Yeah.
But it subdued the threat of an actual socialist revolution.
Yeah.
It established back then the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, and this is critical. That was the thing that controlled the strike waves, and it controlled it in such a way that you couldn't just do like a wildcat strike.
Yeah. This is the part right here this is to me the paragraph that means the most. Can I read this part?
Yeah.
Just over a decade after the Wagner Act was passed in 1947, Democratic Party politicians united with Republicans to impose the Taft-Hartley Act, an amendment to the Wagner Act. The bill passed just after the end of World War II, and the massive post-war strike wave explicitly banned wildcat, political, and solidarity strikes, secondary boycotts, and included an anti-communist loyalty oath. It also gave the president the right to outlaw strikes he declared the threat to national security. The same year the Taft-Hartley was passed, President Harry Truman, a Democrat, invoked it against American workers a dozen times.
Right.
That is crucial.
So
Dick Medhurst talked about this one time when it was going off. He goes, "You think that FDR was just all gravy?
No.
He fucking went in there and he took away your movements. He used laws to fucking crush your movements. The Communist Act of sorts, which wasn't about like just communism as a whole.
No,
it was about workers.
Yeah.
So and people just forget that shit. Where
they want people to protest or to whatever to have their little like, oh, we're gonna stand up and blah blah blah, but they don't want anything to come out of it. They don't want an actual strike, wildcat strike, to happen.
Yeah.
That is like illegal now. Like basically, like you can't do it. And so that's the problem with this thing, right? And then they continue talking about the history, and I'm gonna go skip that, but I'm just saying that there have been less and less and less worker strikes, right? But we had recently the teachers union.
Yep.
A few years ago, I think it was 2018, right?
Yeah.
When we had the teachers strike.
Remember we out there in the rain?
Yep.
It was like a monsoon out there.
There was also a General Motors strike recently as well. But they have been decreasing, and also a lot of those strikes got very little because of the problem with the unions, right?
Yeah.
So let's go over some key provisions of the PRO Act, because these are important, right? So they basically talk how the Biden administration and the party, they bolster unions in order to work better with the global operations of U.S. imperialism. I mean, this is the whole point. And because they're talking like they're going to strengthen workers, but they're actually strengthening the workers' response to the corporate management. A lot of them are part of the union and leadership. So this is a suppression of the class struggle. And this is a really good point to make. It should, first of all, be stated that the PRO Act is not going to pass Congress in its present form. Republicans, who generally favor dispensing with the unions altogether, remain opposed to the measure, and the Democrats would require a 60% vote in the Senate to overcome procedural hurdles. So it did pass. Joe Manchin is in favor, but there's a reason why Joe Manchin's in favor. They need 3 more. They needed Sinema and 2 others. And so because this article is like a month old, so that's what's happened thus far since then. in order for that to happen, what's going to happen is they're going to water it down, basically. They're going to water it down. And one of the things that would likely be thrown out, that's one of the highlights of the bill, is that the bill itself would overturn the Taft-Hartley's act on secondary boycotts, i.e. solidarity strikes, right? And then it would prevent employers from replacing strikers. So that is likely going to be taken out. I mean, we'll see. If it's not, I'll be like,
it hasn't even gotten to the chop shit yet,
but
ma'am.
Believe me, if anything goes out, that this is crucial here, that it would overturn the Taft-Hartley Act. If it doesn't, if somehow by miracle that doesn't happen, then it'll be a better bill by definition. Yeah. But it's unlikely that that you're going to have Manchin and Biden and all these Democrats supporting something. They're going to find loopholes.
This is the scary part of the bill, because if they do take this part out, it's just done. Because anybody who's like thinking about striking, if they know they can be removed permanently, even if they strike with a bunch of people, they're going to be hesitant to do that. You know what I'm saying? But if there's something in there like, all right, you guys are unionized, 70% of the workforce here in this factory is going to strike. It's part of the deal that when you guys reach an agreement, you all have to go back to work. Then they'll more likely go out and say, all right, I'm going to stand up for my rights. But if they remove that mechanism and you know that you can be removed, hey man, I'm rolling the dice here and I can lose everything. How do I send my kid to school? How do I pay for everything? How do I pay my rent? If I can be removed permanently, even if I walk with my union members, that's a whole different deal. That's going to and that's something we have to watch out for this bill, because like we said, it hasn't even gotten to the chop shop yet. Yeah. It hasn't been watered down, and there's a lot of other fucking landmines in it anyways.
That's how the process always is.
Yes.
It always gets watered down.
Yeah. Okay. The parliamentarian might say something. Oh, we got to remove.
Yeah, they're good. Trust guys. The Democrat. What have they done for people to show that they're somehow magically just going to turn around and support you? I mean, I hope I'm wrong.
Zero.
I hope I'm wrong. So another thing that the bill is supposed to help out with is the classification of contract workers, right? So like these independent contractors or gig workers, so like Lyft, Uber, DoorDash as employees. So it's gonna list them as employees, but the law sanctions the category of independent contractors, redefining workers as employees only for the purpose of unionizing them.
Yeah.
So they get unionized, but the chances of them actually getting anything out of it is false. And again, this is likely going to be one of the things they take out. Employers will still be able, even if this passes as this, to cheat these workers out of unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, Social Security, and other benefits. They will be free to impose various out-of-pocket costs on their employees and fire them at will, which is the main problem. Example, tomorrow you could get fired and they can just say, hey, you're fired. This is our reason, blah, blah, blah. No questions asked, right? There's still that whole thing. Like if you do anything wrong, there's no benefits to you. There's no like, oh, you get 2 weeks paid. None of that. That's still not going to change under this whole thing. The unions, of course, are going to be in a better position though to organize these workers, right? But they're going to be taking union dues without getting a lot of anything, because the laws are set as such that it's going to be difficult for them to get anything in the first place. One, the union leadership is set up as like corporations to adhere to, like they have a strong relationship with the employers. Like it's very difficult under the current system to get any of this, and so it's going to be more like a labor contract rather than like, union leadership. And they have to pay these dues, by the way. So you know how like Florida's a right to work state and how other states are right to work. And then we had AFSCME versus Janus that said, like you don't have to pay dues. So it kind of subdued the union membership because of that. So this bill is apparently going to go around this right to work laws by enabling employers and unions to establish fair share clauses. And this would force all the workers, including those who decide to opt out of union membership, to pay dues to cover the cost of representation, collective bargaining, contract enforcement, and related expenditures. But what it does mostly is bloat up the salaries of the union leadership. And they talk about the American Federation of Teachers Union. They talk about other unions that the leadership is making tons and tons of money. When we interviewed teachers, they were also complaining a lot about the leadership. They were complaining about the board members. This is a real problem. It's like the union leadership is in bed with, say, the corporation. Let's say the corporation is Amazon. Amazon doesn't have a union, but if they did, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about any major corporation that has a union. The vast majority of them are corrupt. There are very few unions that aren't corrupt. The nurses union, the teachers union, even some of the teachers union. I mean, this is like, it's very difficult. This is a systemic issue. You can't just solve it by saying, we're going to give more power to unions without fixing the laws that give power to the workers, basically. Yeah. That's basically it. I just wanted to point out, too, that the Democratic Party, of course, is in a way trying to just curtail this growing anger and this growing desire of workers to actually have like a workers' revolution. You've seen what's happened with Chris Smalls and Amazon workers and how hard they're fighting in New York and Alabama. And you guys have seen that simultaneously in order to make sure that doesn't get out of hand, meaning that people don't actually rise up in thousands. What they're trying to do is give them a little bit of bread so they're satisfied. They're trying to basically just squash any sort of like actual workers' revolution. So that's what I wanted to mention.
Johnny, did you send a link to our guest? Perfect.
And the last thing is that DSA, of course, is behind a lot of this. Yeah. And DSA is, again, it's corralling people into the Democratic Party. A lot of the people that are in DSA are now actual work in these trade unions, or leadership in trade unions, and this is all about DSA having their hand in the cookie jar when it comes to the Democratic Party, when it comes to the union sort of language and verbiage, but nothing to actually substantially change the system as a whole. So and they focus a lot on identity politics to try to get people on board with this, and it's really not going to do very much. I hope that it passes as with a Taft-Hartley in it. I highly doubt it is. I'm very suspect of all the people who are supporting it. And if you guys want to show, this is the bill, HR 842, Protecting the Right to Organize of 2021. There's the summary. It's basically what we said. It's just expands various labor protection related to employees' rights to organize and collectively bargain in workplace. But again, it doesn't go deep into the strikes. It doesn't change any of that stuff. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it does make it unfair labor practices to require or coerce employees to attend employer meetings designed to discourage union membership, and prohibits employers from entering into agreements with employees under which employees waive the right to pursue or join a collective or class action litigation. So that's actually a good thing. Yeah. And you guys can read it. It's pretty long. If you go to the summary, or the text, you guys can.
How many pages is this bill? Do you know, Johnny? Does it have it there by any chance? Just curious.
It's text. If you go to text, it should. I don't know why it's not showing you guys there. Oh, it's right here. If you go to the top tab and you click on text, there it is.
There it is.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
Jeez.
Not
not crazy,
not 800 pages, but
all right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very
56. All right. It's not that awful.
Yeah. I was reading it last night, but
it's not that awful.
No. I think most bills should be like that or less.
Yeah, less than that.
Yeah.
Dude, they should have
most people don't.
Forget about it. They should have standalone bills that should be short.
So the reason for going over that was because people were asking me, you should support the PRO Act and blah, blah, blah. And especially here, contract workers, it really does, specifically for contract workers, it doesn't do very much. If you click on an Uber Eats now, I don't know if you guys have done that. Jesus Christ. You get the delivery fee. You get the California something fee. you get the something else fee, the tax, and like it's literally adds like $6 to $10 more.
Yeah.
To whatever you're ordering, and the freaking workers get like none of it.
Yeah,
they get none of it. And is that going to change that? No, it's not, because again, it's systemic. The issue is that we shouldn't have every worker should be protected. Every worker should have the same rights unanimously, treated as somebody that is, that has, you can't, if you get fired, you get this and that. Like, you get healthcare, you get all these benefits. None of these people are getting any of that.
Johnny, anything else on the Fugazi bill over here? Trey Wright, thank you so much. He joined in first. He left some love. Thank you for the Super 8 contribution. It's always appreciated on the couch. Trey Wright, Jindo, same thing. Thank you. Convo Couch rocks. You rock, Jindo. Appreciate it. Hunter Carranza.
Hunter.
Much love, fam. Much love to you. Say hi to Ty. Yep. And Embold Fateh. Embold, I got your shirts ready. I'm going to mail them off soon. Finally got your size. Be on the lookout. I don't know which Embold.
Emblemed Fate.
Embold Fateh. What fate? And thank you, Lucky Burrito. We love you for all that beautiful stuff you sent us.
Burrito.
But Embold Fate, or Embold Fateh, what shirt did we promise you? I know I got your size, and I got a bunch of shirts in. So I'm going to just send you some stuff. I don't know if I've sent you something before. I don't want to send you the same thing. Get on Ben Norton to talk about the fake leftism and the neoliberalism ruined the Ecuadorian election.
Well, we're going to talk about Ecuador tomorrow.
Neoliberalism is the biggest threat to true Marxist socialist leftists. Thank you so much, Embo Fateh. We are going to talk about that. We're going to talk about more about elections today. What about elections tomorrow? So we have a lot of things to talk about when it comes to elections. People got to pay attention to what's going on. Reeve Barker, thank you so much for the Reeve Barker. It is always appreciated on the couch. 62 people watching on the Rokfin, and if you had some Ray and you held on to it, you did good today. You're like, thank you, Convo Couch. No, thank you. That's why it's important for you to go on over to Rokfin, sign up for free. You got a few extra bucks to endorse us. We would love you to do that too as well. But if you can't do that, sign up for free. Hang on out at the Rokfin. We want to get to at least 100 per show. We're at 60 and change. We have 267 on YouTube's. Smash the like button over there, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
We don't have too many trolls, but we want to water them down when they're here. We don't have any thumbs down today over there on Rokfin, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and also we weren't posting until this weekend because we were banned on YouTube, so it literally screwed us once again out of the algorithm,
Of course.
And it sucks, but a lot of people only know that we're live on Rokfin because of YouTube. So we do encourage you guys, if you have a screen, have both up, whatever. But it just helps us out if you like the button, push the like button and all that good stuff. I hate all that stuff.
Yeah, I know, but you got to do it if you can, please. Yeah. It's just a little quick and whatnot and stuff. And to be honest with you, our like to dislike ratio has been great, and you guys have been awesome about that. So please get over to the Rokfin. It's the Rokfin Revolution. They're not going to suppress our voice. We can talk about foreign policy. We can talk about elections over there, and they don't give a damn. They let us speak our mind, and they take care of their content creators. So, fam, a lot of stuff's been going on. Yesterday, everything was crazy. We saw that the Chauvin trial came to an end. Well, for the time being, obviously, the sentencing is 8 weeks away, and there's a lot that could happen between then, from now until then. So we have to hold our breath and see what's going on. But with a situation like this, we want to bring in the right guest, the awesome guest, somebody who can give us a lot of perspective to what's going on. So we went out and got the heavy hitter. You know him. Mr. Garland Nixon is with us. How you doing today, Garland?
Wonderful. Great to be back on.
Now, it's great to have you on, man. I love to talk to you, especially when I have a situation like this that we need to know. We need some insight here. There's a lot of things that went on last night, not just the whole trial coming to an end, but there was another shooting. We want to talk about that. And then we'll also talk a little bit about foreign policy, because we know how you love the foreign policy too as well, like us. But right off the bat, now that Dore Chauvin has been convicted on all 3 counts, including murder, second degree, third degree, what's your reaction? I mean, would you call this a victory for justice, Garland?
Well, not really. If the system worked right, George Floyd would still be alive. So to me, it's no. It's when I look at it, I think to myself, okay, the most obvious case of murder that you could ever come up with, just a blatant murder with a crowd of people standing around with a videotape on. The fact that we're all, having a discussion as though this is a victory, to me means it ain't a victory, if you know what I'm getting at. Because, it's like, let me give you an example. A while back, a couple years back, there was a guy named Mohammed Noor. Mohammed Noor was a Minneapolis police officer. He pulled up in an alley with another officer. A woman came up beside the car. She was white, Australian woman of Australian origin, blonde hair. He shot her through the car window. She died. As soon as I saw it on the news, I'm like, well, he's going to be convicted and go to jail. I mean, as soon as I looked at it, it was like, A, it was obvious that he was wrong. And B, she was a blonde-haired white woman. He was a black person. And I knew that the participants, who's the victim, who is the shooter, all of these things are of great consequence as to the outcome in this country. So, what happens is something happens, like Barack Obama gets elected and people are like, yay, it's the end of racism forever, or one thing happens. And, my mentor was Paul Robeson Jr. and he used to talk about that. He said, like 65, 64, they would pass the Voting Rights Act or the Civil Rights Act or whatever. And a lot of black people would be like caught up in euphoria. Hooray! And then they go back to work and they get discriminated against. Somebody threatened them. Somebody called them the N-word. Their school was still segregated. And they'd wake up like a week or so later and go, wait a minute. One little thing that happened that seemed to be justice or seemed to be right didn't change the very nature and structure of the entire society that we live in. So I to me, it's hard for me to celebrate. It's just like, okay, the right thing happened, but it was so obvious. Even the concept that anything else could have happened other than that tells me that we're in a really screwed up society, messed up society, and an unjust society.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the one time people are seeing something go, and people were still scared. That's how bad the system is, that people were scared to think that he wouldn't, because because this rarely happens. The right thing rarely happens. But despite all of this, American police forces are still spending way more money than any other country's military. I mean, our police forces alone, right? Except China. What has really changed in policing since the protests? A lot of people are saying, thanks to the protests, this happened. Do you really think anything has changed in policing? And do you really think that the protests had any influence on the George Floyd trial?
Not on the trial itself, I think, because the video was so overwhelming. There were reports that members of the jury were kind of wincing, and who would, when you watch somebody being killed right in front of you and close up in high definition video. So I think this trial was so clear and cut, that I don't think that the jurors looked at what was going on the outside and saw this issue as, hey, we've got to do this because it's a part of some gigantic justice movement or something. But I do think that what the protests did was put some pressure on politicians. I've heard today now that the Department of Justice is going to come in and they're going to do one of those practices, one of those investigations like they did in Baltimore, where they look into the long-term practices of the Minneapolis Police Department. I think those things are good because, you get some data out of it. It does put some pressure on police departments. But I've always been one, and maybe I'm making things too broad. I've always been one, as a former law enforcement, I've seen things happen in and out of law enforcement, to believe the problem we have is an American problem. The problem we have is a social and a cultural problem here in America that we have never dealt with. We will never deal with the cultural realities in America. We'll never deal with what happened to the Native Americans. There are a bunch of Native Americans right now languishing on these reservations in dire poverty. Yeah. They were put here by America. They need to be made whole. Their land was stolen. So we've got all of these things that America just sweeps under the rug and pretends like it's not a reality. And this continues to go on. And we act like we can just take one little piece of it, right, and fix it without addressing the sickness that is America. And you know, I talk about foreign policy. Look, what do? We go to Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever. We mow a bunch of innocent civilians down. We blow them up. And then what does America do? When the International Criminal Court says we're going to look into America for war crimes, we sanction the people in the International Criminal Court and say we don't want our guys carrying guns, killing innocent brown people to be held accountable for murdering those brown people. Is it shocking? I always say this: the exact same thing that we do in foreign policy is what we do domestically. The difference between foreign policy and domestic policy is grammatical and nothing else.
That's
100%.
amazing. I don't know though, Garland, because you can listen up over here. Nancy Pelosi had some words to say, and you tell me. Listen to what Nancy Pelosi said.
Millions of people. Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice, for being there to call out to your mom. How heartbreaking was that? Call out for your mom. I can't breathe. But because of you, and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice, your name will always be synonymous with justice. Thank you, George Floyd.
I mean, not only the fact that she shouldn't be speaking at all, it should have been somebody like Keith Ellison or Jamal Bauman or a man of color who should have had the chance to speak, and she should have stepped back and listened for a change. The fact that she's politicizing it and making it look like it's the Democrats who are on the side of truth and justice. Meanwhile, their lackey that's in office right now that controls the White House signed not only the Patriot Act, was for every single war, he signed the 1994 crime bill.
He wrote it too.
You know, he wrote this shit. I mean, Garland, your reaction to this right away?
Yeah, it's absurd. I mean, it's the equivalent of putting on a kente cloth and kneeling. You know, that's what they do. Something symbolic, something abstract. I mean, no, George Floyd didn't volunteer to be killed. He didn't be like, hey, kill me to make things better for everybody else. No, he didn't. He wasn't planning on dying, but it was poorly worded because all she's going to say something. Show me the legislation that you are putting forward. Show me how you're fighting Joe Biden to tell him to stop giving more military equipment to the police department. He's given more in the last few months than Trump has given at any point over that period of time. So show me where you're willing to push back against somebody. Here's the thing: to push back against someone in your own party, you will never, ever push back against someone in your own party. The rules on Capitol Hill are you're allowed to attack the other party, but you're never allowed to push back on your own party. So that sounds great, but, you know, show me something that she's doing. You know what I mean? Something tangible, something you're actually trying to change. I don't want to hear symbolism in words, and it ain't happening.
Yeah.
And who came back for more symbolism, Garland, was none other than Barack Obama, who praised George Floyd, the jury, and said, we need more action. He said, we cannot rest. Let's remind everybody, Barack Obama was the one that, you know, had that whole fake drinking in the Flint, Michigan. Black Lives Matter started under his presidency. And, you know, Barack Obama is responsible for disastrous regime change wars with Hillary Clinton, and not only in Central America, but of course the Libyan slave trade. I mean, this is what irritates me the most with this movement, is that it is so easily weaponized by the Democratic Party establishment for political points. How do we escape that? Like, how do people, I don't know, how do we make people see that these people only care for the weaponization of it? They're weaponizing George Floyd's death now.
Well, I think you're doing it now. I think, you know, all we can do is the alternative media stuff. Certainly, we're going to be attacked. But the other thing about it is, here's the thing I remember about Barack Obama, because when these things happen, you need to have an honest discussion about them, right? You need to put them out there in an honest way. You remember his buddy Skip Gates was coming home and he was at his own house. It was a white neighborhood and the cops grabbed him and didn't want to believe. And if you remember, they arrested him. He was a Harvard professor and didn't believe he lived in this neighborhood. And Barack Obama found out. Now there's an instance to have a real conversation. He had a beer summit. He invited the cop that did it to the White House and had a jolly little beer summit about it. And that was, again, worthless, hollow symbolism. hey, we'll have a beer. And that like kind of symbolized the two of them getting along. Well, this wasn't about the two of them getting along. And it's never about one officer. That's why I got to add this in. That's why I so push back in any language that implies bad apples, this officer, individual officers. Anytime somebody says, well, what are we going to do to get rid of the bad apples? I always say that's the wrong language, because that protects the institution.
Right.
That says there's no institutional problems. There's a few individual officers that are bad guys, whatever bad actually means, or they're making bad decisions in implying that they're, it was a mistake, rather than this is a broad societal cultural problem, and it's cultural within law enforcement, but it's not created. And I'll say this from law enforcement, it's not created by law enforcement. It's like if someone's got a bunch of kids, somebody's got 5 kids, they never hold them accountable for anything. They let them run around. They do anything they want to. And when the kids get to school, you know what? They're going to be in trouble all the time. When they get out of school, they're going to be locked up. Why is that? Because they were never held accountable for anything. And their parents had absolutely no discipline whatsoever in the house. Run around, do whatever you want. You'll never get in any trouble. That's the culture in America that created this problem in law enforcement. The problem in law enforcement is created because law enforcement is not held accountable for these things. Therefore, they're in an unregulated environment when it comes to use of force, particularly against minorities, or add this, homeless people. They can shoot, beat, murder homeless people. The lesser groups, it's they've freedom to treat them any way they want to.
Yeah. I remember when you were in the show before too, you talked about it, like what's the number one change we need to have in law enforcement, and that is the fact that they can't have the ability to look at themselves. In other words, to investigate themselves, or to make sure that that they can't be the ones to hold themselves accountable. It has to be an outside source, and you talked about how to get that done. We're nowhere near moving that, and I don't think anything really systemically has changed within the police departments across America. In fact, they've been given more money, more weapons, and even though we might have had a conviction that was finally saying that we're going to hold somebody accountable, hey, the sentencing is 8 weeks away. There's already talk that they're going to get an appeal because of what Maxine Waters said, and to maybe move the jury a certain way. So we're not even out of the woods right now, and I can never imagine a place that Derek Chauvin is going to go to a serious prison. If anything, they're going to say he's a security risk, and they're going to put him in one of those resorts that have golf and whatnot, but he just, accounted for and stuff like that. So, I mean, I just don't know where we're at, and if we're even moving into a place where we can actually change what's going on with policing in America.
There are some, and I'm reticent to say this, but I got to say this. There are some positive things. There are a few.
Please.
As an example, in Maryland. So a few years back, I worked for the American Civil Liberties Union. I worked at the legislature and working to get new laws passed to address police misconduct. And we had very, very little progress. You know what I mean? I mean, we had good stuff. We had a huge coalition of groups, and I helped putting them together. And we went to Annapolis and we worked, and most of that stuff got tossed right out. This year, a number of the things that they worked for passed, things that I never thought would pass in a million years passed, including one of them is when law enforcement officers are involved in homicides, then the police department won't investigate it, that it'll go to like the AG's office or something like that. So that is at least a start. I mean, it's not going to be that. So there are some things happening somewhere, but keep in mind, while that happens in some states, you're going to have other states where you have the old pushback, like DeSantis passing these anti-protest laws.
Terrible.
So you're going to get one foot forward and, one step forward and 2 steps back in some areas. But there are some things that are happening that, as we were discussing, if it weren't for the protest, and sadly, I mean, if we are honest about this thing, fear. Let's be completely honest here. There's the famous story of Nixon and Kissinger, where they were, during the Vietnam protest, and they had these buses lined up in front of the White House, and to keep the protesters from getting into the White House. And Nixon looked at Kissinger and he's like, they're going to break through that line. They're going to come in here. They're going to get us, aren't they? He was afraid. And there are people that argue sometimes politicians won't do anything unless they're afraid. I do believe, and I'm not saying I'm in favor or opposed, that it is what it is. This is what happened. I think to some level, the fires that we saw, the protesting, the things being broken down, and the, looting, all those things happening over the summer probably put fear in. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifference. I'm just saying this is what happened. Some of that probably put fear in some of these people, and they're like, these people are going to freak out if we don't do something, so we better do a little something. Unfortunately, sometimes that's the way it works.
I wanted to ask one thing before you go, before you ask that question. I mean, just before we get to this next part, though, Garland, at the end of the day, what do we really need to do? We talk about this all the time. It's not really about it's not all about policing and the tactics they use. It's what causes a lot of people to come in contact with police. Homelessness and being in poverty. We talk about Medicare for All and how it would just help so much with the mental illness problem, where a lot of police officers, they're not a fucking doctor. How are they going to show up and handle the situation with a person who is mentally ill and needs help? So, I mean, wouldn't those be the core reasons to really help the whole policing in America, is to fix the systemic issues of Medicare for All and poverty and homelessness?
Oh, absolutely. What's interesting is you always see these these various numbers of how many black people were arrested for this or that or this violent crime versus how many white people. But you know what you don't see? You don't see those demographics based on economics.
Exactly.
What if you were to see the same demographic? I've always argued, if you say, okay, how many black people versus how many white people versus how many Latinos? Okay, let's do this. How many people who are living under the poverty line, or 20% under the poverty line, or 30% under the poverty line? You know what you would find? You would find that those numbers of black and white started to align, that it was a matter of poverty. When you say more black people are more likely to be impoverished, more Latinos are more likely to be impoverished, but you go into the poor white communities, you're going to see the lines of crime and things like that start to align, wherein people start to realize this is an economic and class issue. Yes, it is very much a race issue, but there's an economic and class issue too. I was a police officer, and I used to always say, you know what? I didn't arrest a whole lot of people with college degrees. I didn't arrest a whole lot of people who were wealthy, middle class, or upper middle class. Yeah. You arrest people and you talk to them, and you go into a prison. You know what you find? Horror stories. People who were tossed out of foster care at 18, and they're like, okay, you're 18, you're out here on the street, and they were out there involved in prostitution, crime. What? They didn't even know how to survive. They knew nothing, didn't even have a decent education or GED. People who suffered abuse, violent abuse, sexual abuse. Don't go into a women's prison, and you're lucky to find any woman there who wasn't some victim of violent sexual abuse at a young age. So we don't deal with the social and economic factors that put people's lives in danger and put them in a bad situation. So by the time they become old enough to be a part of society, they're broken human beings.
So while this was happening with the Derek Chauvin trial wrapping up and him being found guilty of George Floyd's murder, there was a 16-year-old girl who was killed. She was shot 4 times by an officer. She called the cops herself because she was being jumped on her residence. Now, she is in foster care at that residence. Her mother was actually in contact with her. They were going to meet the next day. So she grabbed a knife to defend herself. Because she was in this altercation with these other people, and there were multiple people there. Then the cop went in as soon as he got there, didn't ask questions, did nothing, shot 4 shots at her. She was laying on the ground bleeding. She then died. And then the mayor reportedly stated that the officer took action to protect another young member of our community. So as an ex-police officer, how would you classify this shooting? And we can just play the video in the background, Johnny. That way we can be discussing it.
Well, there are a couple of things here, because here's the first discussion you'll hear amongst people. Well, she did have a knife, she did have a weapon, and she was a threat. Okay, but here's the other part of it. Go online and start searching armed white male attack police. And you know what you'll find? You'll find video after video. There's one where the cops are at the guy's window, and they're going, "You've got a gun on the seat," and he's like, "Yes, and I'll shoot you." And they're like, "No, don't do that." And you're like, well, there's how about Kyle Rittenhouse? He shoots people and walks by the cops. You're like, "Hey, dude, what's up?" You know, what about the guy in South Carolina shoots 9 people in the church? The cops pick him up and they friggin' take him to Burger King and buy him lunch on their dime. Yep. So you see instance after instance. The other instance, I was just watching a video a few minutes ago. 2 cops are rolling around on the ground, a male and a female, with this guy. The guy gets one of the cops' nightstick and he's beating the woman in the head with it. 2 cops. He's beating the one cop with the nightstick. He then jumps up. They just chase him. He gets in the police car, steals the car, drives away. They never fire around. So here's the issue. If you make an argument in any instance and say, well, in that instance, I can say there is justification for the officers to shoot. Then I say, okay, here's 10 other instances where there was much more justification for the shoot, but they elected not to. They used their discretion and said, you know what, in this instance, I'll try another way. I'll do something else. And I'm not saying they were wrong. I'm saying that's the right thing. You didn't have to kill that guy. And the same way here, but there's no discretion, it appears, when there is a minority there, when there's a Black person there, when there's a homeless person there, when there's people in these groups that aren't counted. There's the discretion, the decision to say, technically speaking, I could pull the trigger, but in this instance, I elect not to. That just doesn't happen. And that's the issue.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the police aren't there to be judge, jury, and executioner. That's the other thing. I mean, I want to ask you, though, what happened to tasers? What happens to rubber bullets? And what happened to Biden's shoot him in the leg? I mean, not like that. All of that could have happened potentially. But I mean, do these officers not have those weapons?
Well, you know, again, see, there's a term, you know, I was a police trainer. I ran our academy. And what's the term? Officer discretion. You talk about that a lot in training, the discretion of an officer. You train an officer. When you're on the scene, for instance, I come upon the scene and you're violating the law. I can elect to write you a ticket. I can elect to write you a warning. I can elect to give you a verbal warning. And it is an obvious violation of the law, but I can elect to just walk by and let you keep doing it, right? Yeah. Officers have a pretty good amount of discretion. So that's what it comes down to. What officers aren't trained is the issue of discretion, and in particularly when it comes to the use of force and when it comes to the use of force against particular groups. The other, you know, when you talk about training, most of the time the training pretends as though things are colorblind, right? The training for an officer is if somebody does this, you do that. If somebody says that, you do that. This is your option. This is when you can and can't do this. What we need in reality is real training, where we actually lay it on the line and say, you know, look, you're a police officer, and historically officers have been more likely to do this against minorities or black people, Latino or whatever, where we lay it on the line and use the truth. But America would have to, here's the problem. The United States would have to admit some things that the US doesn't want to admit. Instead, it's a lot easier to point to one officer and say that guy's a bad apple, to point to Derek Chauvin and say he's the bad guy. We just got the devil out of the, everything's good now. He's done.
Before you go into that, a lot of leftists are talking now about police abolition. For me, police abolition is not literally not having anybody there to help out when you get mobbed or when there's something else. They mean like not the policing done in the way that it's being done now, right? Like a complete and total change. That is also up for debate because different people have different meanings, just like with defunding the police, all of that. What do you think about police abolition? For me, you can't talk about abolishing the police if you're not talking about the Pentagon or the national security state or the military apparatus, because the policing, in my opinion, in the United States is but just a smaller version of our military. And you talk about it all the time, right? We go around the world, we go kill people around the world. It's the same thing. So if you're going to talk about police abolition, I feel like it is, you're missing a huge portion of it if you're not talking about how America operates foreign policy wise.
I'm 100%. I agree with you 100%. I preach that a lot, and I get a lot of pushback because you have the people who are like, oh, well, we're fighting in America for Black Lives Matter, whatever the case may be. And I say, I think you're wasting your time. I think you're not completely wasting your time, but a lot. If you really want systemic change, you have to address the system. This is a violent system. The things that we do. People are like, there's too many guns, and they push too many guns in society. Well, you know what we did in Syria? What did we do in Syria? What did Barack Obama do with Operation Timber Sycamore? Right,
Yeah.
We pumped tons and tons and tons of military hardware into a small country here and there, and then what do you know? People are getting shot all over the place, and that's the same thing that's going on here. If Palestinian lives don't matter, you can't allow. And see, here's the thing. And I found this too. There are a lot of people that work on these, nonprofits, and they work for, let's just say, this kinds of stuff. But here's what they know. If you and I, the three of us, start a nonprofit tomorrow, and we're going to work on anti-racism stuff in the U.S., that's fine. And we'll get money from God only knows who, maybe the Ford Foundation, the King, the Knight, whoever will get money, stuff like that. We can raise money. But as soon as we say, oh, by the way, the Palestinians, oh, by the way, we want to stop this wars that we're starting with so-and-so, we don't agree with overthrowing name the list of countries that we're trying to overthrow. All that money's drying up. You're not going to get on any TV program anymore, and you are on the third rail, and you get electrocuted on the third rail. So that's the key to me that lets you know that that's where you really need to address, because they will allow you to talk about this stuff. But if you start bringing them and blending them together, you have problems. You're not going to get any money anymore. You're not going to get any support. You're toast. You're going to be called like a Putin bot or so. God only knows what.
Speaking of Putin, and by the way, Operation Sycamore Timber or Timber Sycamore, I always get them mixed up. It's one or the other. But
Timber Sycamore.
Yeah, they took the guns out of Libya and they moved them over into Syria, and that was just crazy. And you're a foreign policy guy. Here's a little snippet from an article from Moon of Alabama, which is one of my favorite.
They're great.
Great to go to there. Check this out. It says, this is fun to watch. U.S. Navy ships were supposed to sail into the Black Sea in show of support for Ukraine and to send a specific message to Moscow due to concerns about mounting tensions between Ukraine and Russia. Moscow then let it be known that it was not amused about the obviously pre-planned provocation. We warned the United States that it would be better for them to stay far, far away from Crimea and our Black Sea coast. It will be for their own good. This has been hysterical this whole time. And you mentioned earlier in the show about how our foreign policy directly relates to the violence that we bring back here at home. What grade do you give Joe Biden so far for his foreign policy, especially pertaining towards this debacle in Russia?
A Z. I give him a Z, only because that's as bad as I can think. It's his foreign policy is unfathomably horrifying. I mean, I just searching for words to say this guy's been here for 3 months, roughly. Along the border of Colombia and Venezuela, the CIA's got firefights going on there.
Yeah.
He's moved more troops into Syria, and they're looting the oil in Syria, and there's a troop buildup in Syria. Trump had set to leave Afghanistan May 1st, and Biden, we're not leaving. People are like, oh, we're leaving in September 11th. Here's what I say. If an alcoholic said to you, if you said, you need to quit drinking, and he says, I'll quit in 4 months, would you believe him? Of course not.
You put that tweet up.
4 months.
We had that tweet up when we interviewed Jimmy Dore. We put it up. We're like, no, we're not going to get out of Afghanistan.
That's the good part. That's the scary part. So now this guy goes to China, and he's menacing China, and he's like, if you try to take Taiwan, why, we'll go to war. Well, every war game scenario in history between the U.S. and China and Russia ends in nuclear war and the annihilation of all humankind. I had a guy call my Pacifica radio show, don't you think we should protect Taiwan? And I'm like, most Americans have no clue where it is on a map.
Yeah.
And we're going to end all of humankind to protect to quote protect it. First of all, how are you protecting them if they're all dead and we're all dead? What kind of protection is that? Next, Ukraine, which is a country that the government overthrew under Barack Obama, and now, which is not a country, excuse me, it is a colony of the United States. It is not a country. It is not an independent country. It is a broken, failed, impoverished state that is used as a proxy battlefield against Russia. Somehow, these idiots in Ukraine were convinced to put their military up against Eastern Ukraine and threaten the Russians, put their military in the area of Crimea, threaten the Russians. And the Russians put 2 armies and 3 divisions of airborne, basically surrounded them. So here we sit with the Ukrainian military, which would not even be a speed bump for the Russian army. They wouldn't be a speed bump. They'd be wiped out. The Russians in 2 days, 3 days would be in Kiev if they decided to. So we've put them up there, up to this. Certainly they can't very well attack because they'd be wiped out immediately. Yeah. But here's the other side of it. If in fact the president of Ukraine, who's got all these neo-Nazis in his parliament and all that stuff, if he backs down and retreats, the mad neo-Nazis in his country will now turn on him and say, you back down to the evil Russians. So he can't move forward, or his military gets wiped out by the Russians. If he backs off, then he's going to be facing the mad neo-Nazis in his government. So he's in an untenable catch-22 position. So what happens now? And the Russians are clear. We don't want any trouble. But if this guy starts any trouble, we're going to end it in a hurry. And let me add this. The nickname militarily for the Black Sea is Putin's Lake. It's completely covered with missiles and submarines and everything by the Russians. There's no point in sending a couple. I mean, it would be suicide to send a couple of ships in there.
Yeah. And on top of it,
it's absurd.
They, I think this is a different Russia than it was 4 years ago. And I think that Joe Biden and Jake Sullivan and Blinken are learning that quickly. They said it's best you not come in here because it's going to be some serious problems. And then they cut off the Ukrainian Navy from doing any actions and said, you're not going anywhere. We're going to show you what's what. Now Zelensky is calling for a meeting with Putin because he's scared. He doesn't know what to do. He listened to the Americans. They did some drone actions from some drones in Turkey, but they're in a very serious situation. And people don't realize that we facilitated that. We supported this regime change on the Maidan where they, set police personnel on fire and stuff that were trying to protect the government at the time. It was really, really disgusting. And it was backing neo-Nazis, the same neo-Nazis we've been backing since the end of World War II. It is a FUBAR situation, fucked up beyond all recognition. Thank you for your opinion. Johnny, I'm sorry, do you have
Did you have a question, Johnny? No?
Garland, I'm curious about what you think about Turkey's role in all this regarding the Black Sea and everything. Because, to get to the Black Sea, you got to go through, that inlet right there, right next to Istanbul. So I was kind of curious about your thoughts on that.
A couple of quick things about that. One of the interesting things about this whole Ukraine buildup, I'm glad you asked that. Think about this. The Ukrainians start this buildup on the Ukrainian military around Crimea and around Eastern Ukraine, where the Russian speakers are, right? In response, the Russians then start a buildup, a much larger buildup. So the U.S. says, we're going to send a couple ships into the Black Sea to let the Russians know who's boss. Turkey reveals that they made the request to send the ships in weeks ago. So it wasn't a response to the Russians. They were really going to send it in when the Ukrainians started the buildup. And then once the Russians did it, they're like, yeah, it's a response to the Russians, of course, until they found that the Russians were quite unhappy about it. They decided not to do anything. But Turkey's, it's really weird. Erdogan's a dangerous guy.
He is.
He's all over the place. He's in Libya. He's in Syria. He's 1 minute he's trying to be friendly with the Russians and he's buying S-400 anti-aircraft stuff. The next minute he's back to NATO and he's blaming the Ukrainians. He seems to be an unstable guy. And might I mention that the Turkish lira is on a precipitous downfall.
Yeah, it is.
So his own country has an economic disaster going on. This guy's pretty unstable and scary. He is basically an unstable international player, in my opinion.
Yeah.
One of the last questions I want to ask Garland that kind of ties everything together is we've been seeing a lot of abuses on our First Amendment rights, our civil liberties, when it comes to the coverage of protests. And also that directly relates to Julian Assange. We had a lot of people who were, a lot of us were saying, hey, look at how these protesters and these journalists specifically are being treated in Minneapolis, Minnesota. For covering these protests. They're being, pushed into a gas station, having to lay down, get their face taken picture of. They had their credentials photographed. They were treated and at gunpoint too to get out of their cars. Simultaneously, a lot of us have been talking about Julian Assange and Julian Assange's coverage, of course, and exposure of U.S. war crimes, Western war crimes in general, and how he is, of course, in Belmarsh prison right now, awaiting the attempt of extradition into the United States. So a lot of people don't see that relationship there. Why does the First Amendment and Julian Assange matter so much? And how could we relate that better to people who are protesting, whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement or any protest for that matter? Because a lot of people are missing that connection, and I think that connection is as important as seeing our foreign policy and our domestic policy and the whole police state as a supersede.
Well, I think what we're seeing, this is this creeping authoritarianism, and it's really catching up with us in a hurry. You just get two different versions of it, two different flavors of authoritarianism. Trump had one flavor of authoritarianism that was pretty outright and blatant, and it was like, you're going to do what we say or else. What the heck with you? Whereas the Biden-Harris authoritarianism is authoritarianism with a smile. We kind of say we're here to act in your best interest, and we're here to help you. But think about this. Again, what happens when it's foreign policy? Trump goes in and says, we're going to steal the oil. We like the oil. We're taking the oil. He's straightforward, right? We're thugs and we're thieves. And Biden and people, we're there. What about the women? We can't leave Afghanistan because the women's right. It's the same thing. It's an authoritarianism that's expressing itself here. And they have to do this. They have no choice because their policies would be, if most Americans clearly understood the policies of their government, they would oppose them. So they have to lie to us constantly. And those of us who try to actually tell the truth, or at least, I'm not saying the three of us are truth tellers. Here's what I'm saying. We're at least making an effort to evaluate what's going on here. Honestly, there's not an agenda that we have where we have to have some clandestine agenda to move some policy, a suite of policies forward. We're looking at what we see, and this is what the press is supposed to do. Looking at what we see, discussing it honestly, and reporting it. In an authoritarian regime, you can't have that, because it's all a bunch of lies. And so what is Julian Assange is the most perfect example, because the one thing that you can't do in this kind of an authoritarian empire is tell the truth. They can stand a lot of things, but they can't tell the truth. And so Julian Assange, I'll say something else. I think the world has learned a lot from the transition from Trump to Biden. And I've talked to people in the foreign policy and international security analysts in Europe and different parts of the world, because this is what they learned. The message to the world and everybody was, things are so, our foreign policy is so unhinged, things are so crazy here because of Trump. And once Trump's gone, everything will smooth right out. America's back, blah, blah, blah. Biden comes in, our foreign policy goes even crazier. Yeah. And nothing really, when it comes to the policies here, now there's a few economic and domestic policies that are different. But when it comes to the policies of dealing with people, with human beings, with the government addressing your freedoms, they're pretty much the same. And I think a lot of people in the world have realized, wait a minute, we were told that was Trump, 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 Trump. That's American policy. That's who this country is. And whoever they put in, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
100%. Yep.
Garland, you're amazing. This is your second time on. You got to be a regular here. As soon as you jumped on, the numbers went shooting up today. We got over 300 on YouTube.
That was coming from Langley. That was the CIA.
That's what it is.
Meade. I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, I can still. There's a million more questions I'd like to ask you. I think that we have to pay attention.
If you want to stick around, whatever you want to do.
Well, we'll do another show soon, because I think we should pay attention to the protests that are going out there right now. with Black Lives Matter and stuff, and we talked about the Proud Boys, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, Boogaloo Boys. It's all such a small piece of what's really going on. You've always mentioned before, but I think we should pay attention to the protests and how they're being manufactured out there. If they are for real, if they are genuine, do we have the right leaders in place? We should keep an eye on this. Have you back, and then talk about this more down the road, Garland. Thank you so much for coming on.
All right, thank you guys.
That's a badass shirt, by the way.
Yeah. Although I'm a Banana Republic guy, man. I love Banana Republic. It just fits me perfect.
And like you said on your tweet, defund the elite ruling class. That's who we got to defund, baby.
The predator class.
The predator class needs to go. Thank you, Garland.
Thanks a lot, you all.
Appreciate you. Wow. Man. Love Garland Nixon.
Yeah.
Garland Nixon. Love him.
Have that,
you know what I'm saying?
And I agree completely with him. I mean, I have a hard time. I personally am for the abolition of the police system as it is. But if you're not going to talk about the foreign policy aspect of why, so many people easily accept police violence here because that's how our country operates from inception. Yeah. Going around the world and killing a bunch of people. So I think we need to tackle that as well. And like he says, the moment you tackle that, you can say you're for Black Lives Matter, you can say all these things, but the moment you bring in foreign policy and try to connect the dots, that's when you become a huge threat to the status quo.
Yeah. That's like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton. When they start connecting the foreign policy to domestic policy, it was lights out. That's when they said, no, we got to get rid of these people because they're going to bring people together and they're going to understand that the elite ruling class is the people who need to be abolished and stuff. We haven't got a hold of it. We need to. I hope we do. And it's going to be very interesting to see a lot of these protests go in the street with the leadership there, what they're going to push for. And I don't know. I'm open to see. I'm still hoping that Fred Hampton comes out and really unites people, brings it all together. And we have a real movement against the elite ruling class and get them out so that we can get in there and really make some changes for.
It's got to be economic too. Like it can't just be. It has to be. Economics, 100%.
I mean, Garland has great balance in his mindset and his ideology. It's just amazing. He really can speak to a lot of people, and a lot of people like to listen to him. And even Carrie Mark left us a super raise. Said, "Great to see you on the Convo Couch, Garland Nixon. It was great to have him on." Fam, we're gonna get in trouble because we have Mark Sloboda on, we have Garland Nixon on. They're gonna say you're RTers.
They're already saying that, fam.
Embel Fate left another super ray. Thank you so much, Embel Fate. It says, any plans on covering the U.S. intervention? I can't say that. Is it Mozambique? Mozambique. See, Mozambique. Gloria and Steve covered it. Of course, Gloria and Steve did. They're so great at covering that stuff. They get out ahead of a lot of things. Yeah. They're awesome. We'll get on it, and especially the tensions in Africa. Mm-hmm. Keep up the good work. Listen, one of our first shows, we talked about AFRICOM. Mm-hmm. We talked about what Barack Obama did. He moved the drones and opened up bases, and Congress didn't even know about it, and stuff. And they were there. Then when Donald Trump came in, he armed the drones on the next level. That foreign policy still stays the same, baby. The military-industrial complex is running things. So, yeah, we have to get over there. We have to see what's going on. I mean, Libya was not the type of they didn't have the type of results in Libya that they thought they were going to have. It was a disaster. And what's going on there is truly sad. Truly, truly sad. No More Donation said our government and NATO are using Ukraine under Geist's pretense of helping them. Yep. Of course, they always do that. By building up a military resources all around Russia, effectively continually poking the bear in the eye, and Bernie Sanders is aiding and abetting this warmongering imperialistic activity via his Navalny standing, etc. People who aren't calling Bernie out for this are complicit in warmongering. Enough.
Yeah, I called him out the other day. I was pissed. I said, how do you go from supporting the Sandinistas movement and then you go right into being basically a narrative manager for the public relations department of the Biden administration? Yeah, it's really bad. It's really sad. Like, he's just repeating CIA talking points. Yeah. And anybody who knows anything and knows that Navalny is just a CIA asset. He's just a CIA asset.
The guy's never held public office before and stuff.
There's no evidence of him being poisoned. There's no evidence whatsoever of anything. We've talked about this with Mark Sloboda. We've talked about the ships. We talked about so many things, and I'm just so sick and tired of talking about it because people are still regurgitating these talking points.
Yeah, I mean, Bernie really screwed it up for a lot of people. He was really, he's another sad story. Just a really, really sad story. I saw a poll out there, or somebody put up a poll about potential people running in 2024, and Bernie Sanders was like 3%, and he was the only one on that list that I would even like. And I won't even vote for Bernie. I will never support him ever again.
Yeah.
It really is a shame. We were watching Joy Savage's fundraiser yesterday, and she had on an interview with Larry Sanders, and we remember that moment with Larry Sanders when I give my nomination to Bernard Sanders, and Bernie just sitting there and almost crying, and Larry, and I burst into tears when that happened. It was such a moment.
It's crazy how far we've come from that. It feels like ages ago. Like it just feels, oh God.
By the way, Larry Fine, there was a great name over here, Martinet, a lot of great people hanging out, Farming Ganja, Karen Riddles, Wolfgang Felix, Anthony
Ganja.
Reyes, Farming Ganja.
We should just do that.
Martinet. You guys, Sweet Lou, baby. Sweet Lou, you got to get over there, Martinet. Get on over to the Rokfin. We have almost 85 people. We'd like to bust over 100. We have 300 of you hanging out on YouTube with the suppression, I might not add. And we're going to get to this last topic right now and plow through this because it's not too long, but it is very, very important. There's a lot of stuff going on with Ecuadorian elections. There's a lot of stuff going on with actually, Johnny's going to love the story we're going to talk about tomorrow because Johnny exposed fucking New Hampshire for the modems. Remember, Johnny? You have SIM cards? And we were like, oh. Well, that is supposed to be illegal, but there's a story that is broken out, and we're going to break it tomorrow. I'm going to talk about it. It's been talked about that they actually, behind closed doors, the vendors have been working with a lot of federal commissions and stuff that are in place to look over and oversee these elections, and they're actually making backdoor deals and allowing modems in the ES&S systems.
Really?
That was the one that me, Niko, and Tim Canova beat the crap out of. We did the whole was that the Office Space thing. That was an ES&S tabulation machine. And guess what, baby? They got modems in it. Modems. So you could change the results. A modem gets you into that system. You can do anything with the software. You can start programming it. It's easy. But the thing we want to talk about right now is that we have an audit coming on in Maricopa County. This is something they've been fighting for, the legislation. They've met resistance the whole way. A lot of the establishment, not even just Democrats, but the establishment, Republicans and whatnot, have been pushing against this, trying to not allow this audit to take place because we've talked about this before. Even though they gaslight you and tell you there's audits taking places, Johnny can tell you from firsthand experience. We can tell you from firsthand experience. They're not audits.
Yep.
They're logic and accuracy tests.
Yep.
How about the one we went to in Cali not too long ago? Fugazi as can be. It's just some dude just giving us plain answers. I'm like, do you guys even know what the hell you're doing over here? It looked like all for show.
Yeah.
Do you know visual lip service.
Of an audit? Because that's not an audit. Yeah.
Well, anyways, to start off with, Arizona has its own audit web Twitter. It's pretty cool. Every day it's growing. Maricopa audit, Arizona audit, which I have now applied for press credentials. I want to go see what's going on. They're going to have observers. I want to go talk to a lot of people over there. There's a lot of people too in that movement over there as well. It's Arizona. It's a big Trump area, whatnot, and I want to educate them on some of the things they have wrong. The majority of what they're talking about the audit, they're on point with. Arizona State has the Arizona State Senate has taken possession of the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. That's where the Phoenix Suns used to play. They got a new stadium. Fantastic progress being made by contractors to bring the equipment for the audit, which will begin on Friday. Now, this is a full forensic audit. They're going to authenticate the ballots. Javon Hutton Pulitzer's in this whole situation. They want to look at the software. They want to look and see if any changes were made. Johnny, what Raji wants to get into, they want to look into all that. They've gotten the right to look at that. I believe those are called the Cassandra logs, to see if anybody went in and out of the system at any time. When they had the hearing, when Giuliani showed up, and obviously he concentrated on some good things, and he said some stupid things as well. But when he was talking about, he said, well, a forensic audit, find out what we need to find out. And he was talking to an ex-employee of Dominion that worked on software, and he was in the military as well. He said, yeah, a forensic audit will give us everything we need to know. 2.1 million ballots.
Wow.
2.1 million ballots, but they want to look at everything. They want to authenticate the ballots. They want to authenticate the software. They want to see if anybody was going in and out of the software. They want to check the signatures. They want to do everything. They think within a couple months they can have these results back. But you got to watch the gaslighting and the way they kind of do people into thinking a certain way. They're still trying to make this connection of January 6th and the audit, election audits together. That it's a certain type of people who want to do this. Yeah. Evil people. So let's take a look. Here's a local news station, very biased, and you can watch right out of the gate the way the newscaster is on board, the way the ex-Maricopa County recorder, and then, you know what I'm saying, this guy has been just like ridiculed, ostracized, yelled at, been tried to hold accountable, and he comes up with the same fucking bullshit establishment talking points, the way they just try to mislead and gaslight the people. So watch this little lip service. We'll start off.
Back to square off. 6 months ago, Democrat Joe Biden won the presidential election. More than 6 lawsuits and 147 Republican members of Congress failed to overturn the results. This week, 16 Arizona Senate Republicans are expected to start their own audit of the presidential election results here in Maricopa County. Again, no wrongdoing has been found. Last week ended with Maricopa County and the Senate at odds again over where the county should deliver the 2.1 million ballots and the voting machines the Senate wants to audit. Will this audit even happen? Joining us to dig into the audit and the larger questions it raises about the future of our elections, Adrian Fontes, former Democratic Maricopa County recorder. Elections were a big part of his job. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thanks, Graham. Great to be here.
I want to start with a bigger question. Many of the comments about this audit are along the lines of, it's crazy. Supporters accuse people like me of being a traitor for daring to question it. What kind of damage can this audit do to future elections?
Well, the damage is already being done. This is an active effort to erode confidence in our democracy by folks who believe in an illegitimate authoritarian movement. Really, what we saw on January 6th was a violent insurrection against the Constitution of the United States and regular, normal process in turning over power peacefully. So we need to call it what it is. The folks at the Capitol were domestic terrorists, and the people who are supporting them are seditionists, and they need to be held accountable. This is genuinely a terrible moment for this country.
Fam, first off, Jesus. Johnny kind of said something to it. I was kind of saving it in my gun holster to use as a weapon and stuff. He says he looks like Dean Logan. I said, yeah, this is the Dean Logan of Arizona, of Maricopa County over there. These guys almost like look the same. Here's a picture of Dean Logan.
Yeah, they look so much alike, dude. So if you want to get this position, fam, continue on your diet. Let's see, we could get you a mustache.
I gotta dye my hair black.
Wear those glasses. You'll fit right in. Look, Pasta, you can be
He's
next.
The same guy.
Dude, it's the same guy.
Wait,
I'm
same
confused.
cyborg.
Am I high?
Okay.
This is the same guy.
Okay, but in all seriousness, I say this yesterday, laughing my ass off.
Did I take LSD?
It's funny, but in all seriousness, look at the way they're trying to tie this together. As far as this is an establishment fucking lackey over here, this guy Fontes and stuff, right? They're trying to tie in what happened on January 6th.
Right.
The insurrectionists. These are the same type of people who want an audit. This is bad for our democracy.
An audit is not bad for. We need audits to verify elections. It's never been a bad thing. All of a sudden now, because of January 6th, they have this excuse to say, oh, like all these people, because they were for Stop the Steal, that means that our elections, any questioning of our elections now is a right-wing talking point. It's bullshit. Our people have been questioning our elections for a long time. We haven't had fair elections for a long time. This is nothing new. Like, do not let them gaslight you into equating what a few people did at the Capitol to we should never have audits. That's exactly what they're trying to do to get away with all the shit that they do.
Yeah, and the TDS really plays in the part over here because it says to people, it makes them agree with this shit. Like, well, why should we question our democracy and stuff like that? This is wrong. There was no bad foundings. There was no wrongdoing found. Well, yeah, because we're not allowed to look. We're not allowed to change, we're not allowed to check your work, in other words. And they've always prevented audits, and they always take these logic and accuracy tests that we talk about. kind of frame them as audits, and then people go, okay, it was audited, it was looked at. Like, no, this is something serious. We should be doing this with every single election. There should be an audit done by it should be the people's audit, and done by the people in the public. What they're trying to do in Arizona right now, that's why they're taking in observers, they're taking in press, they're letting people look at stuff. This is going to be done out in the open, and they've had all these different types of third contracted groups come in to make sure that the audit is done properly, everything from the transportation of the machines and whatnot. But here goes the next part. This is what they're going to try to do, and you can sense them. They've tried to stop this audit every step of the way. It's been a struggle to get this audit.
I'm surprised it even got this far, to be honest.
Me too as well, and I'm surprised. I still don't. He was like, will it even happen? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even know if it's going to take place and happen, because I think they're going to use types of delay tactics, whatnot, and say, okay, this is why we didn't do this and that. Now they're starting with the scanners, the machines. Oh, fam. We can't move these things. They got to be moved by professional people. We have people moving like shit all over the highways here and there, like the biggest things for houses and whatnot. We can move mountains, but we can't move scanners that count ballots. Listen to this part, and you can see they're just, once again, here they go. They're tipping their hands, and they're gaslighting the public at the same time.
And we'll find out more about where the audit's going in the middle of this coming week. The audit is supposed to start at Veterans Memorial Coliseum as of late last week. The ballots had not been delivered. The machines had not been delivered. The Senate apparently not following its own subpoena. Let's focus on the machines for a minute, because in a letter last week, the county said, we will hold you, the Senate, responsible for all unnecessary costs. And I think they were referring to the machines. How easy is it to just pack up machines? Can you just pack up these vote counting machines in a box and deliver them?
Machines, they are highly specialized, what you see on the screen now, scanners that were procured under EAC rules. They're certified federally. They're manufactured in Germany, and when we got them, we had to have folks with training unpack them. These things will cost tens of thousands, if not more, dollars each to pack up again and move to another location. And the potential damage to these machines, by the way, the scanners are leased to the county. The county doesn't own them. Any damage is going to cost the county a lot of money. So just that one factor alone really reveals how little the Senate knows about what it means to run elections in Maricopa County or in Arizona.
So you're saying it would take time and a lot of money to pack up these machines and move them to where they're supposed to go, I think, which is the actual Senate building.
Well, the subpoena says send it to the Senate building, and the subpoena says the ballots should go to the Senate building. And if the county is to do what they're ordered to do, they've got to send the stuff to the Senate building. At that point, it becomes the responsibility of the Senate to move them to Veterans Memorial Coliseum or wherever else they're conducting their audit or examination or whatever it is that they're doing. And so, moving these things once and setting them up in the warehouse really was what they were made for. Moving them again and again and again, it really could have the potential of damaging these. And they're just leased machines. That's going to cost a lot of money if something happens to them.
And that tells me these machines are not going to...
So, fam, there it is. We can't have this audit because we can't move these machines. They're too expensive. And we don't even own them, fam. We're leasing them. So it's going to cost them so much money. We can't do this stuff.
This is just proof of how the media, like the fake media, right? They send their goons to basically work with these people to create this narrative that audits are bad. Like, this is what I mean by, like, they're not real journalists. They're not, they're just doing this. This is designed. This is planned to make sure you dismiss audits, to make sure people believe that this is unnecessary, to make the people wanting to do this bad just because, they're conservatives. I don't give a crap who they are. Like, we need audits are good. You're not going to change my mind on that. Like, they're necessary. In fact, we should have more audits in
real
America.
Audits.
That's our problem, is that we don't have 100% audits in this country.
And I want to say something. Me, fam, Johnny, right here, right now, we're not asking for an audit or for fair elections to show that Joe Biden cheated the election to beat Donald Trump. We're showing this because we want our grassroots candidates to get a fair shake in all their elections. We were complaining about the Bernie Sanders treatment and the elections that were happening under him. We've talked to people, Angelica Duenas, Raji Robb, Maria Estrada, all these local grassroots candidates that we want to make sure they get a fair election for them, which we suspect a lot of hanky-panky from establishment assholes who never go out into the streets, like Tony Cardenas, like Anthony Rendon. Like, how does Debbie Wasserman Schultz keep getting elected?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk about these things, we're protecting these grassroots candidates first that will really operate like a Shama Sawant on the grassroots local level. That's where we want to make the biggest change. We also want it to go all the way up top, of course, but it's about protecting the grassroots candidates as well. And this is not about Donald Trump and Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen. And also, they're kind of exposing themselves to show you how much waste and money they're spending on these companies. Well, they were manufactured in Germany. The fuck you doing, assholes? How much money is that going to cost? And now you got to spend a team thousands of dollars to come in to make sure a scanner. We've been using freaking Scantron when I was in high school and had machines to count this shit. This is stupid. They're gaslighting. They're faking. They're duping the public. And they're also trying to set you up for why they're going to try and stop this audit. They're still going to try to stop this audit no matter what, even though they got, the Senate has got full permission right now. And this is also a scary part, fam, because we keep on saying, like, how do all these assholes keep getting reelected? Look at this jerk off talking. He's going to finish up on why we can't move the machinery. It's too sensitive. And then they're going to talk about him running for elections again. And he gives his best Dean Logan.
Going to be in place by the time this audit is supposed to start on Wednesday.
I don't see that happening. It takes time to get the right people in to pack these things up. They have to come apart first. You just can't stick it on a forklift and put it in the back of a truck. These are specialized pieces of equipment, just under, as I recall, about $100,000 a piece for the 9 that are in the ballot tabulation center. And then there's all the smaller ones that were out in the polling places, vote centers, and et cetera. So this is not a small undertaking.
We'll be keeping our eye on that. And I know one question folks watching this are going to have is, hey, he's on TV. Is he running for office again? Will we see your name on the 2022 ballot?
I can't say for sure right now, Brian, but I know that there's a lot of folks out there who love the work that my team did in Maricopa County in 2020. They love the fact that they had an open, free election. It was the most secure election in Arizona's history. And running elections is now in my blood. We'll see what happens in 2022. But right now, we're here to protect the integrity of this republic and the processes that were run by Republicans and Democrats and independents, who are the folks who did this election. I want to help protect their work.
Yeah. Adrian Fontes.
Okay.
Adrian Fontes.
Integrity. What integrity? We don't have
most
integrity.
Secure election, fam.
No. How is it the most secure election if they're also saying that Russia still meddled in the election now?
China thought about it, but backed off.
Yeah. Like, seriously? Like, oh, God, I just can't with these people. And the sad part is too many people buy into this, even on the left. They're like, oh, yeah, it was. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the only cheating was voter suppression. I mean, this is about audits, right? Yeah. Audits are necessary. They're important. And
yeah. And not to mention, too, that Time Life magazine put out their article about how they changed all these laws and rules and whatnot. It was illegal. You know what I'm saying? And they pretty much just justified their cheating in every single step of the way. And I can tell you this as an election integrity activist. I'm sure everybody here in this room can tell you that things have been getting worse when it comes to elections, not better. We have had some progress where Raji's kind of moving up the ladder, trying to get more insight to get into these machines, and it seems like he gets closer and closer and closer. He's one of the only people. Well, I mean, there are like a lot of other lawsuits, and there are other things breaking out around this country too as well.
And he's one of the only people on the left, or on the progressive end to do it.
I mean, it's thank God he's doing it and stuff. But that's the thing; it's going to take a village and people in other places and areas and whatnot. And Johnny is putting up all this stuff where they're saying that it's the most secure election, but they still went to Putin. But Putin. Our elections suck. We need to fix our elections. We need election revolution. We need to change so many things. Yeah. Elections are like, I think of elections too like a poker game, because I always use this poker analogy, but I do. When I sit down at a table and I see a lot of new poker players play when I do play, you'll have the first person who will play what? Position. Will always just play their position. That's what they've learned. They're going to play the position. Then the next person next to them is going to play on odds. He's going to figure out the odds of what it is to make his hands every time. Then the next person who's going to figure out, he's just going to read what the players do. Right now, he's going to look at what the players do, and he's going to react based on what those other players do. And the other person's going to react on their stack, how much money they have, how much money they don't have, and they're going to react upon that. Well, to be a good poker player, you have to have all those skills in one person. And that's the same thing with elections. We have to do the same things. We have to look at the mail-in ballots and the absentee ballots, how they're mailed out, who they're mailed out to, who's making them, what happens to the ballots that aren't used. Let's look at the software. How is that software working, whatnot, who's operating, who's going in, look at the back end, what type of software it is, and what's going on. Let's look at the way we actually go in and do elections in person. Is that mellifluous? Is that free, sweet flowing? I mean, can people get in and out? Can they do those things, or are they held up? Whatnot? There are so many facets, but it's a contest. It's a game. And it's just a shame that a lot of people are getting duped, and they're getting duped because of TDS to say, no, they're right. These Democrats, why do we got to do this? Those people in January 6th had no right. There's been no proof. Yeah, but there's been no oversight. There's been no audit. There's been no checks and balances. We've been saying this is election integrity activists for a long time. And if they do it to Donald Trump, they'll do it to your grassroots candidate. And that's the biggest danger to everything here, because an everyday average person, an activist, someone who's not well known that can really do well for his community, wants to run, will get cheated in light of the establishment candidate that they want in place to make sure that they have a corporate hold on everything. And that's the danger if we allow this to happen in any step of the way. If we don't call out bad elections against, no matter who it's against, whether it be Donald Trump or somebody else, we're screwed. The last part of this right now is that you can sense the Board of Supervisors and some of the Democrats or the Republican establishment people who don't want this audit to take place in Arizona are still going to try to do everything. Now they're concentrating on the machines. Can't move the machines. These are sensitive pieces of equipment over here. You know what I'm saying? We got to get the right people to move these things, to pack them up right. I mean, they're fucking scanners. This is absurd. Well, what's going to happen if they try to stop people again? Representative Mark Fincham, who didn't return our phone calls, didn't return our emails when we wanted to get in the room for the Arizona hearing. And Mark, I hope you let us get in the room next time. He was on a forum of sorts, on a Zoom chat forum, and this is what he said if, in fact, they try to put up another roadblock.
Everything that I'm telling you, I've gotten from information releases from the Senate. I do not have personal knowledge, nor have I personally observed any of this. But I do understand the work plan that has been communicated. Right now, they are basically saying, we're going to show up at the Maricopa County Tech Center, and we're going to enforce a subpoena. And if you stand in our way, there will be an attorney waiting at the Maricopa County Superior Court to introduce a temporary restraining order to get you out of our way. You are not going to stop this. Well, whenever there's a vacuum of information, and I understand you're skeptical.
Yeah, okay, well, I hope that happens.
You're not going to stop this. They're listen.
I hope so.
It's been so much time, though, right? So
yeah, I mean, even if they're lying, if all these people are just, like mad, angry Trumpers who just want to, make a big deal because they can't accept that Trump, even if all that's true, right? Even if what does it hurt to have an audit? Like, if you have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Why are they so opposed to it? It's the same thing with COVID and all that stuff. Like, if you're so secure on the information you're giving, then yeah, just have an audit. Like, it's like take a lie detector test, Like, you didn't do it. You didn't kill someone. Do it. Like, why are you so afraid of coming forward with everything? If this was the most transparent election of our time, the audit should reflect it.
Yep. And if you're a Biden supporter and you think that you won the election fair and square, let us do the audit, right? Let them do the audit and show then you'll shut these people up.
Yeah.
Right? Just show your work.
Yep.
Show your work. This is our democracy here. This is our democracy, fam. We need to protect it. We have to make sure it's true. We have to make sure there's no problems in it. But, I'm still skeptical, even at this point, that something's going to happen. The feds are going to come in, shut it down, say there is a personal issue, right? Like the freedom to protect your identity and who you voted for, voters' right.
That's the route they could take, too.
They can use that. And like Fam said, what is the harm of having an audit, a real audit? Every time. Johnny, you got anything else? Oh, you don't want to show that tweet?
Oh yeah, let's just show that tweet. Guys, this is getting ridiculous. This is getting out of hand. So Jonny will read it. Jonny, you can read it.
So Carolyn Borisenko, who is a creator on Rokfin.
Yep.
She apparently had to talk to FBI agents. So I just had to speak to 2 FBI agents who were investigating me over making sarcastic tweets. No, I'm not joking. Even they seemed embarrassed about it. The FBI is literally spending their resources investigating individuals over sarcastic tweets. Think about that. So that's really interesting. So she responded to somebody and said there were 2 tweets I sent while standing on the Capitol lawn on January 6th. The first said something like, "It's not every day you storm the Capitol," and the other was retweeting a former friend who was denouncing me for even being there, and I was basically telling her to screw off. So, yeah, it looks like there's some locals here, a video on locals. So I don't know.
She's now on Rokfin too, so find her over here. Whatnot. I think she just did a show the other day with Niko. So they talked about some things. I think Niko actually kind of recommended she come to the Rokfin platform, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it's a good place to come over here and speak your mind and stuff. But it is crazy that she is contacted by the FBI. This is where we're at, ladies and gentlemen.
That's like 3 people already.
This is where it's at.
For tweets.
This is where we're at.
Or tweet replies, which is even worse.
This is where we're at.
I mean,
authoritarianism with a smile. Hello, Joe Biden and the military-industrial complex.
And Kamala Harris and her laugh.
AOC's got the laugh now. No More Donation says our government and NATO are using Ukraine under the guy's pretense. We already read that one. Ono Onakakala Ono. The officer shot 4 times after the woman in pink was already away from the girl with a knife. He could have given warning before shooting. Another officer could have tased. We said this. So fucking disgusted. Keep up the great work, Pasta Fiorella and Jonny. Mahalo.
I can't tell you how many people, literally, as soon as I said anything about it, because, a lot of people follow me, and some people who follow me are not on the left. Because I'll go after Democrats, and this is what always happens to me. I'll go after Democrats. I'll go after, the establishment. I'll be in support of election audits and talk about election integrity. So I'll get a lot of, I'll get a few right-wingers who follow me. The moment I criticize the police, a lot of them go away. Not all of them. Some of them are like, okay, but there's that part. It's like the hypocrisy of, and I think who did I talk to about this is, I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but it's like you have to be consistent. Oh yeah, I did a podcast with this gentleman who's a libertarian / anarchist. We were talking about things. It was actually a really good podcast. You guys should listen to it. But it basically, I was talking about how we were talking about how there's no consistency in the lot, both on the left and the right. Like there's a lot of reaction on emotion, and it's very much tribal. And you have to be consistent. Like if you're for, self-defense and defending yourself, like Garland said, then that applies to everybody. It doesn't just apply on your ideology. Same with freedom of speech. Same with being anti-cop. Say Ashley Babbitt didn't deserve to die the same way some of these other people didn't deserve to die. There shouldn't be a change based on ideology, and I think there is, and it doesn't help when you do that.
And it is kind of disgusting sometimes too as well. I don't think I call out some of these people on the right enough when it comes to the situation, when it comes to, policing and stuff. Justin Jackson had a tweet that he went back after Steven Crowder. And Steven Crowder made such a stupid, insensitive, asinine statement about now a lot of cops are going to be quitting around the country because of this decision. Are you fucking kidding me? And then Justin went at him. And I was like, how can you, seriously, Steven Crowder, this is the stupid shit sometimes that.
I can't shoot somebody that I can't kill somebody openly, so I'm going to quit. That was his tweet.
It's so dumb. And you can sit there and you can be what's the word? You can distinguish between this murder is bad or that matter is bad, and you can be, open-ended about a situation. But when it came to George Floyd, when it came to Elijah McClain, it's really hard to sit there and say, holy shit, that these assholes who did this shouldn't be cops and should go to fucking jail.
Yeah.
Every situation is different. You know what I'm saying? But to say that people aren't going to be a cop because of the Chauvin decision, dog. Have fun with that, Crowder. Seriously, that's some asinine, stupid shit.
Yeah, and I'm just glad to have the
Stupid
voices that
stuff.
are, that have been calling out the hypocrisy on both ends, because I think it's important that we're consistent. And I think I try extremely hard to be consistent. Like, I will get yelled at by right wingers and leftists at the same time because of that. Because it's we were talking about it with Jimmy Dore. It's like, I'm like, Jimmy, they're yelling at us on the right, on the left. Like, it's like everybody's yelling at you. And, Magnus often talks about that too, how everybody hates him. Like the right wingers hate him. The leftists don't like him. And it's like this thing where, I consider myself extremely leftist, but at the same time, like if somebody on the right says something that I agree with, I'm going to say, okay, they said one thing I agree with. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden I'm a right winger or that my ideology shifts. It's just like, I look at the truth first, right before the ideology. And a lot of people sometimes on the authoritarian left operate like ideology first and anything.
Tribal, very tribal. Yeah.
And the same thing on the right. It happens on the right. Like, no, cops, I'm going to support cops no matter what. And that's
not true.
It's not fair.
You shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And somebody once put a thing up, but we were talking about it, like this, the sensible right is aligned with the sensible left, and they're actually talking about things on a nuanced level. You know what I'm saying? They're not just getting tribal in the situation. They're not going. They don't play team sports, fam. That's the thing. Johnny, what do you got about U.S. healthcare over here?
So someone had posted, Joshua here. He says, just got my $39,000 hospital bill for having a stroke at 34. So you can see that there. $38,587, New York Presbyterian Hospital.
Jesus Christ.
And so this tweet says, U.S. healthcare, a play in 3X. So the New York Presbyterian Hospital actually responded, thank you for reaching out. Please send us a direct message so that we can learn more. And then he comes back and says, just got a call from the hospital. My actual balance is $74,189.
Glad we can fix that for you. Make a double.
So I just wanted to show that this is what happened.
I mean, what do you do with that? I mean, that is a lifetime of debt for most people.
How do we not have a universal health care? That's the way the cookie crumbles, guys. Some people got to just pay us, unfortunately, because if we had universal health care, we have the government take over, it's a disaster, and we can't have that. So therefore, you got to be bankrupted for life for having a stroke.
And then someone below it posted this picture, and I'm like, someone's like, my stomach hurts, doctor. You're lying, person, doctor. Anyway, here's your bill, $60,000.
Yeah.
This literally happened to me.
Yeah.
This literally happened to me.
Yeah. Like, I don't even want to go to the doctor anymore. And that's the problem. A lot of people don't want to go.
This literally happened to me, fam.
Here's your bill.
Literally.
No, but you don't even want to go to the doctor because half the time there's nothing wrong, right? And then if there is something wrong, you're going to have to pay more. You're going to have to pay more. And like, even if there's nothing wrong, you still have to pay. And so what happens is a lot of people don't go to the doctor, and then they find out they have something that is far worse. That's what happened to Joy. Like she all of a sudden woke up and she couldn't see as well. The injections cost $12,000 per eye. $12,000 per eye per like month. Like it's fucking insane. Yeah. And what happened? She couldn't afford it. She did a few. She couldn't afford the rest. If she had kept doing that, because there were other people that she talked to that said, "Oh, I'm from Canada. I had the same thing. They gave me the injections and I kept my eyesight." So one person gets to keep their eyesight. The other one loses their eyesight now. Yeah. Potentially loses their ability to do the show. I mean, how could you do the show? It's going to be difficult. And like, and then on top of that, you get like bullied and shit online and all this crap. And on top of that, you get in debt anyway, because you have other medication you need to take and all this shit. It's not fair. Some people like they get these shots that they need, these things they need, and they're fine. In America, it's a death sentence. Yeah.
Fam, I'm sorry, but it's her fault for not living in a country that has universal health care.
That's pretty much what our government is saying.
And I feel like climate change is, adding to it, because more people are supposed to get allergies because of the climate change, because there's more CO2 in the air. So then plants are doing over-pollination and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's happening with allergies, and I feel like it's probably affecting stomachs too, because I've been talking to some people that are like, yeah, I have problems with my stomach too.
A lot of people have stomach issues. That's why it's like hard. Like a lot, our friend Amber's like, it's hard to be vegan and eat organic because they do put a lot of GMOs into a lot of the vegan, unless you cook like actual like 100% like vegetables all the time, and like that takes time from scratch and all of that. But if you get like any Bill Gates products and stuff, which are a lot of the vegan stuff, try to minimize as a vegan eating those products as much as possible, because we really, it's hard to control what's in them.
Well, a friend of mine just told me there's some other options to start using some other things other than soy, period. He says, like, stay away from soy, period. It's poison, and he was giving me some options. In fact, I asked you guys, Cafe Gratitude, right? Like, supposedly he goes, like, go there. You can emulate a lot of their recipes. They don't use that manufactured
really
shit.
good.
They stay away from Bill Gates and whatnot and stuff. And fam, also, too, about all the other stuff. We haven't even mentioned social engineering, geoengineering. Oh, God. That's social engineering. Geoengineering can also play a part. We don't even talk about that.
We're not going to talk about that.
We're not even talking about that. We don't get shut down on YouTube.
Look up Jackson Facts.
Look up Jackson Facts. And, you know, I mean, Steve Poikonen does some great work on this. Jason Burmis. A lot of things they talk about. Jason Burmis has a documentary about that on his YouTube before they take him down from YouTube completely. John, what did the sergeant say?
It says, I think we need to step back and think, what if George Floyd was white or Chauvin was black? It couldn't be politicized. The system is probably not so much cops. I don't blame IRS agents for horrible taxation / theft. So I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
Well, I think he's kind of alluding to the whole fact that they just politicize everything and any chance they can get to use it for themselves.
Well, the politicians politicize it. That doesn't mean the issues don't exist, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that there's not, like Garland said, you know, like you can find all these videos, like in relation to Ma'Khia.
The one you play from Snoop Dogg.
You can find all these videos, right? You can find all these videos of different circumstances, but it's also poverty. It's also class. You have to tackle both.
Yes.
As a movement, you must tackle both.
Yes.
100%.
And, you know, I was just going to say that's the politicians, the mainstream media, they're going to use it. They're going to politicize it to their advantage. They want to keep us separated from each other. That's why I think we should have to concentrate on the Black Lives Matter protests that are out there, the ones that we go to and whatnot, see who the leaders are, see what the unity is and stuff like that. I still loved the Black Lives Matter 757 mentality, right? Okay. It's about, no, we'll work with the Boogaloo Boys over here because they're just like us. They're anti-government. We have to find a way to bring that together.
You're not going to agree on everything 100%,
so.
but who do you agree with everything on 100%?
And that particular Boogaloo Boys group was pro-BLM.
None of these groups are monoliths.
Yes.
When you try to paint them all as a monolith, this one Boogaloo Boy did something wrong. Yeah, he's completely like outcasted by the other ones. They don't like him. So like same thing with some BLM groups, like the Patrice Cullors was found of committing fraud, of pretty much taking all this money. That's true. Does that mean I think every BLM person is committing? No. So the same way I don't judge them like that, I don't judge another group like that. And like
I'm just curious about who they're going to pick for their leaders and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, we had that guy Hawk Newsom who walked into that New York Trump rally with about 6 BLM protesters, and he convinced them to give him time on stage, and they were bonding after. Now he's no longer with Black Lives Matter. I want those leaders right there. I want to see what they're up to. He left the Black Lives Matter movement. The guy's been on TV. He's had a TED Talk.
Interesting.
No, Hawk Newsom is amazing, and he got at odds with the national Black Lives Matter movement leaders. A lot of the
national don't like these like militia chapters of BLM or the Black Panthers. So they're, they offered the Black Panthers, the militia, some of the Boogaloo Boys and other militia groups offered help to the protesters in Minnesota, and they were turned away because of the gun thing. But here's the thing. You show up there with militias, which, by the way, in that state are completely legal. And it's in the Constitution. Do you think that these cops are just going to fire at people and throw rubber bullets and tear gas? It's going to be a little bit more hesitant, guys. And like I think sometimes a lot of the left has a tendency to be extremely anti-gun, and I used to be extremely anti-gun. Like I was never like take away their guns, but I was more of like, oh, we need to get rid of AR-15s, we need to get rid of all these things. I have changed my perspective based on the fact that the police and military are so fucking heavily armed. And we if the population doesn't get armed, like with whatever happens, I'm sorry, we're putting ourselves in danger. And people of color, specifically, I'm talking to you, they're the ones that are like look who's being shot at. I mean, come on, you want to have weapons. Like this is why the Black Panthers were such a threat to they were completely targeted by the CIA and the FBI because they realized this, and they also talked about imperialism. So that's where we need to go, I think, and that's why I love new YouTube shows popping up, like the Fred Hampton leftists and stuff that are popping up, and I love that idea.
Rome?
Yeah.
and that's the thing is that they demonize the Black Panthers for having weapons and guns and whatnot, and they had that to protect themselves and everything. But what did the Black Panthers do every day? They tackled poverty. They had food lines. They went to schools to give kids breakfast and stuff that wouldn't have,
They gave
food and
healthcare,
stuff.
too.
They did so many things, and yet they were ostracized as this awful group that ran around with weapons. And now we have to disarm them and stuff. So I mean, we have to learn our history properly, and we have to build upon it. Johnny, anything else? All right, guys, that's it for today. We have 85 people watching on the Rokfin. That's good. We almost got to 100. We'll try next show. We had over 300 people watching on YouTube. That's great. Thank you to all the PayPal supporters, people throwing us some love on PayPal. Thank you to the Patriots, the Patreons.
Why are you putting up the parrotfish?
What? It's the
It's always there.
It's the parrotfish. Thank you to all of you people who've helped us out through all in this way. We could continue to need that support so we can get out there and hit to the streets and bring you what's what. A lot of things going on. We're going to talk about the Ecuadorian and Peruvian elections tomorrow. Talk about what's going on with the modem situation in our machines too as well. So there's things we'll be tackling as we come up. We're going to bring you the news. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. If you can get over to Rokfin, Rokfin, please do so. We always talk about joining in the monetary gains.
They're working on making it more seamless. Johnny was
Android
at a
app. Everything.
Notifications, all of that you guys have asked,
New events too as well. New live events, sporting events they're going into as well. Yeah. So they're really not dropping a lot of things as far as they were just dropping hints, but there's a lot of things coming to the platform we're going to continue to build on, and that is our new number one home because, like YouTube still has us demonetized. YouTube can give us a strike and censor us at any time. We'll continue to go there because we want to get the message out there, and we have to do that. But please come to Rokfin as well. Rokfin. For Pasta Jardula,
Fiorella,
Johnny Sue on the ones and twos.
Convo out.
We love you all.
Parrotfish.
Dolphin.